Thank you for the intro music. Everybody who wanted to join has joined, so I think we can start. My name is Philipp Puls. I'm from 72 Solutions in Vienna, and I want to tell you today about how we got into the password transmission business and the why. But before I do that, I want to indulge in one little thing. I just wanted to have a presentation with a unicorn. Thank you. The origin of our problem was that we had an auto login into our database with a demo user. And then you could re-authenticate with a script, and the script checked your password in a file with decrypt and encrypt custom functions. That was all seemingly quite nice, because we were able to transfer those passwords to different solutions and use them in different places. Because we have a vertical solution, a user might not be just active in one file, but in many files, or not only in one server, but on many servers, etc. But then we were lucky enough to have a new customer that is in the banking business, and their IT department said, no can do. If you have somewhere in the database any password encrypted anywhere, we can't sign that contract. It's plain and simple. And that was a head scratcher for us, because we have not only FileMaker applications, but we have a web application too for time tracking, and the users are normally taxed enough with remembering one password. So they wanted to log into the time tracking and the FileMaker solution always with the same, so you want to synchronize them. How you do that if you can't decrypt and encrypt the password? So basically, that was the end of our auto login, painfully enough. And the consequence was that we started utilizing native FileMaker accounts, because they don't store the passwords, at least not obviously. And how do we do that transfer now? So we invested quite a bit, and that is a process of 8 years ago. So nowadays you would simply go with some OAuth provider and do that properly. But in those days we just had to do our own thing. So we did the following. We have a web application that's called Users, and there we have decent two-factor authentication, login, blah, 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 where every customer and every user can manage their own accounts. We have there the companies, the units, the users attached to those units, the locations, and the licenses. Then this information, if created or changed, is transmitted to a separate table where we have, in those days, XML tasks. It's pseudo XML, but never mind. And this pseudo XML is reachable and public if you know the UUID of that license, of that install. So every install has a separate UUID, and you can look for your unfinished XML tasks there. And our base 72, that's our vertical product with the customer, our FileMaker files, they have their UUID locally saved, and through curl can now look for the tasks. And of course, also our time install can look for those tasks, sync the users and the hashes. So we can receive those tasks via UUID, and we can write back that we've done them so they don't appear a second time. So what are these tasks? We can attach a user to a license. We can transfer them from here to there. We can transfer them from one company to another. They still stay the same user. We can set the user to active and inactive. A user can change name and email. And of course, they can create and change their passwords there. So we have on that website, users.72solutions.eu, we also have a forgotten password routine, which we always missed in FileMaker. But of course, even if you change the password in some web application, that has not much impact to the FileMaker side if you are not transmitting the password. Because if those XML tasks are more or less public, even if you secure them, I wouldn't feel fine transmitting a password over the internet. So a password task needs those four components. We need a username, we need an email address, we need a salt, and the hashed password. And you see here, hashed password, brackets, salted and peppered. I will come to that. So a task would look like this. So what is salting and peppering? I have a password that I write somewhere. This is user-specific. I have a pepper string, which is site-specific. So the pepper is the same for all passwords. Those two come together and are just elongating the user password, because user passwords normally are too short. So now we have a longer password that is peppered. Now we hash that string. And the user, when the user was created, got a user-specific randomly generated salt. And now you can guess what the next step is. Those two together are added to the hash of the password. So now we have a salted hash of a peppered password. And this, of course, gets hashed again. And now we can do this in a loop for as many times as we like. And those iterations, again, oops, that was one too quick, I'm sorry. I have to build it out again. some quadruple millions. I don't care. It just means the time that you have to wait to create them. But if you don't hit the specific and correct number, you'll never get there. So the output in the end is this password hash here that is salted and peppered over and over again. And this we can transmit because that has no inclination of how to calculate it back to the original password. So now that task with username, email address, salt, and hash is transmitted in that XML task. And when the user has changed his password or hers, she will know. And she gets prompted with that classic FileMaker dialog field with 3 inputs she needs to make. And that's her username, which she decided on, the email address that she has, and the password that she used before. And those inputs are not stored in fields, but only used in variables. So they are ephemeral. So when we now resolve the password, we use the username and the email address to identify the task, because we only need to find the youngest of those tasks. Sometimes people do crazy things. They change their password 5 times in a row because they can't remember the first one, they can't remember the second one, the third one doesn't work, okay, the fourth one does work. So we only have to find the 4th task. All the others are irrelevant anyway. Then we read the salt from the task. We read the password hash. No, we read the password from the input, because they've inputted it in the dialog, and we still have it in a variable. And now we can salt and pepper it in a custom function that knows the amount of loops and the pepper. So that custom function is the key, and we have only transmitted hashes. And if the resulting hash of our salting and peppering matches the hash in the task, then the password needs to have been correct. And now we have a username and a validated password, and we can just use them to use FileMaker scripts to create the user account. And once the script stops, everything's gone. Nothing is kept of that. So what can we do with this? User onboarding. So we send a link that is attached with the UUID to the company license to all the users that should be onboarded on a new system, or if they are joining the company. And then they fill out the forms on the web form, and the task is created, and the first time they log in, they're presented with those 3 input fields, and then they're on the system. We have a single password for the web apps and for different FileMaker solutions, all that are on that user synchronization process, and that could also be third-party FileMaker solutions, because we have that user synchronization in a separate file, and we can attach it to any solution that comes our way. Now we have a forgotten password process. We don't need to look anywhere. Basically, we can't tell you your password. We can just tell you, go to users, click on forgotten password, fill out the form, answer the email, and you're set. We can change the password now while we are out of the office. So for example, I have a very good colleague and she knows my password from old days, but while I'm on holiday, she got fired. So what do? I need to change my password. And I can do that from any internet cafe. Because the moment I change my password, my user account in the FileMaker solution is inactive. Up until the point where I go through that process with the user sync, fill in the 3 fields, hit enter, wait a few seconds, and then my account is live again with the new password. Of course, if you present something that's 5 to 8 years old, you would do something differently, wouldn't you? I do. I wouldn't use sudo XML anymore. Honestly, why? It would be JSON. The web app that we had professionals write for us would now be WebD. There is no magic in there. Everything you do there is licensed anyway because they are known users, even if you're an SBA like us. It would be just as quick and the processes would be much cheaper to implement. And the insert from URL with UUID now could be a decent REST API call with a timeout and everything. And those REST API calls could now be secured if they were a data API. That would be much easier. I wouldn't have to go through that crappy web page and downloading the XML text. But hey, it works and it does amazing things for us. Thank you. Russell.